I'm now looking at a bit of a side issue with this boost control. As you've probably seen, I'm not sure I'm going to edit this together yet, so as I probably posted earlier in this video, I'm doing the Arduino and I'm writing a program to do the electronics side. But it's quite clear still, even with the work I did on the solenoid, that I'm getting this boost spike when the engine winds up onto boost, which particularly in the lower gears is really unwanted, because it's giving me much more power than the rear wheels can handle in the lower gears. This only really came in when I put the fire ring into the wastegate, and the fire ring is just this little thing. It's basically like a valve seat that you'd have in a cylinder head. This wasn't in originally in the car, which meant that the wastegate never sealed, so it was always leaking. This meant I couldn't boost beyond about 0.5 of a bar, but the boost did come in nice and gradually. So it's often with these things that you do, you sort of go, you know, one step forward and two back. Trying to get the two forward and one back would be nice one day. So what I'm doing, I've taken this out and I'm going to measure the gap to see how much kind of exhaust can get around the wastegate. It's probably best if I do a little show of the wastegate. So this is the wastegate, this is the air side, where the boost side. And basically you've got like a valve in here that just slides open and shut with the pressures causing that. So this ring is meant to sit in there. So I won't push it right in home, but it means that the valve sits on that ring. Now the car didn't have that in originally. The engine, all this boost stuff was originally on a bike, and I wonder if that was intentional to give it a more progressive. So we've got a very slight gap around there. So what I'm thinking is, I don't want a gap as big as that, because that was stopping me going above half a bar. But if I can make a small gap, so if I have the firing in and somehow keep this valve just a fraction open, it might help reduce the boost spike, and also that will also have the effect of kind of reducing mid-range torque, because it's the mid-range torque when it kicks in that's causing the wheels to spin up. So I'm going to measure that gap up and then see where we are. So I think to measure that gap, the easiest way is going to be to hold the valve pretty well in its sort of position that it's kind of most open. Sorry, that it would have been in the closed position, and use feeler gauges to see how big the gap is. It actually looks like it's quite a large gap. Yeah, so if I put that roughly in, it can go down. So that's, in fact, actually what I'll do is put this, I'll put that back on. Yeah, so I've put the pressure part back on, so I can push that, so I know that now is in the position that would have effectively been fully closed. Let's see how big a gap we need. That's 0.9 feeler gauge, and that's going in fairly easily. This is going to be a fairly rough measurement. I can see it doesn't sit fully in the middle. I reckon, yeah, one's going in. Probably around 1 millimetre. I think we'll give ourselves 1 millimetre as being best guess. I don't want the gap as big as that, so I'm going to put the firing back in. And what I need to do is work out a way, when that's in, of holding, no, that's not in properly by the way, of holding that valve very slightly off of that seat. So a little tap with a hammer just puts that seat back in. And we can see it definitely, that valve now won't drop out. So what I need to do is work out a way of keeping that seat just like a fraction, maybe quarter of a mil, open all the time. This is all going to seem a bit mad to most people with turbo engines. So most people with turbo engines, you're trying to keep this slam shut until the last possible moment, because you're actually trying to gain all that mid-range torque. But most people with turbo engines aren't running cars with only 450 kilos. So I'm not most people. Basically, what I need to do is stop this plate going all the way down. This is going to look awfully bodgy, but if I literally just drop a nut in there to use as a spacer, I can then see, hopefully the camera can pick that up. I've now got a gap there. Let's just use the feeler gauge. So you can see we've got quite a big gap there, obviously because I put a nut in there. So is that a way, I know it seems awfully bodgy, but is that a way of doing this, is to attach something to the bottom there? It doesn't have any danger of ending up in the engine, because that chamber there is just attached to the pressure side of the exhaust system. So not only is it, would it be sealed within there, it can't go anywhere. Of course, what we can't really do is what I just spoke about, and putting something in there, as the spring sits there. So that's going to push the spring up, which is not desirable. Can't go on the outside because that mark there, you can see that's where the bigger spring fits. Although I'm hopefully with a boost controller never going to need a bigger spring again, I'm not keen on doing something that isn't reversible. So I've done more head scratching, and with this off, you can see so that this diaphragm thing fits on top of there. When it's closed, this obviously sits right the way flush here. So if I could put something around here, like a washer, or should put it better would be a spacer, then when that's on there, that's going to stop this going all the way down. So I'm going to have a little look what I can find that might just fit there. Just so happens a 10mm washer, or should we now call it a spacer, fits really nicely over there. And if we just put this back on, I'm not sure if the camera will pick that up, but we have a small space there. Just grab my Allen keys. It's probably about 1mm at the moment, so I think what I'll do is I'll measure that washer spacer, just see if that's 1mm as well, because it's a fairly thick one. Actually about 1.7mm. I'm going to have a rummage and see if I've got any of those little, that's a sort of a standard washer, see if I've got any of them thin ones. What I've found is I've got some are 1mm, I found some others that are 1.2mm, and then the one I had a minute ago is 1.7. So it could almost give me a fairly easy way of adjusting this little offset by changing those. And actually putting something on the top of there isn't too, well, it's not too hard a job on the car. It's actually a pain in the ass on the car to take this off because of the clearance is so tight, but I've done it that many times now. I'm starting to get the hang of doing it without losing too much skin off my knuckles. So I think that's what I'm going to try and do. I'm going to measure the gaps with each one. So let's put this in and let's measure what the gap is. You can get the 1mm around the seat there. I think that's all the way home. Let me put my glasses on and see what I'm doing a bit better. Yes, I've still got about one. It's actually quite a way off of there. more than I thought it would be. Yeah, I think it's raising more than expected, because when I put this washer in the diaphragm, it's actually, where this is heavily tapered like a cone, I don't think it's sitting quite all the way down, where although this washer's slightly thicker, it does sit in that little gap there. So let's measure the gap with that one. Okay, so I'm going to just try this one that's a smaller size. Put that over there. Oh, it's going to fit. Thought that wasn't going to fit for a second. Okay, I can see by eye there's a tiny little gap there. Can't get the 1 mil. Let's see what we can fit in. Yeah, so I can fit. That's a 0.2. Oh, I've got these. These are, these millimeters. 0.2. 0.6 isn't fitting in. 0.4 is probably about what the gap is there. I can feel if I push it in, I can just feel it pushing against my hand there. This one is 1.3 mil. I think I'm going to try it just with this, because if my maths is right, it's the good old square law. So to halve the amount of air leaking past this, I think I need to quarter the gap. 0.2 definitely fits in there. Yeah, we're probably about 0.3 of a gap. So I think I'm going to try that. Yeah, let's give that a go. So the miracle of editing. You probably don't know, I've just had my lunch. So ready to get back to it. Of course, time for another coffee. And I shall put the wastegate back together. If anyone knows, because it would be handy to have these little washers in different thicknesses. If anyone knows what these little narrow washers are called, or if there's a spacer or a shim or something with a 10 mil hole in the middle, can you leave a comment on the video, because that would be really helpful. It'd be really helpful if I could have a few of these in different thicknesses, so as I can shim this up and down a little bit until it kind of works in the way I want it to. Thank you. Time to get this wastegate back together again. So I've got that one washer on there that was about, let's just remeasure that, because I'll actually use this video as a way of knowing what size it was. Let's see if I can do this. There's crap calipers that keep going to 5 mil. Okay, so that one washer, where are we, about 1.1 mil. Or a spacer, or a shim as it's now going to be known as. So I'm going to put that one on there. I'm going to keep these to one side and then put this lot back together again. So if you've got one of these I've had this apart a few times now. Sometimes when you fit this cap on, it's really difficult to get on. That's actually fitted on okay. So once that's on, there's 4 little grub screws that work as little pinch screws to keep it together. Pop them in. Right, and then just pinch these up. Obviously there's tiny little threads in here into alley, so it really is the tiniest bit of pinching's needed. There we go, so that's those pinched up. We drop the spring in, and the trick I've found, it doesn't matter so much with these light springs. When you're trying to do a really heavy spring, it's really hard, especially in the car, it's really hard to compress that down. So normally I've got some really long 5mm bolts that I use as kind of guidance dowels, and then once it's sort of engaged I take those out. Because I'm doing it here I don't really need those, but I still use ones that are much longer than necessary. It's just easier to get them started, and because it's only a little 5mm thread, it's really easy to cross these things. I've actually helicoiled the threads on these because of issues. Okay, so that's one wastegate back together. As you can see, these bolts are far longer than they need to be, but they're quite useful to compress the spring down. Certainly seems to work okay, so I would definitely suggest that as being a handy tip. It looks a bit ugly, but this is all hidden away on the car. I can actually feel that that is a bit proud still, so let's just, now it's all screwed down, I'm going to recheck that gap. Yeah, it's quite small. I can feel 0.2 is just going in. Be interesting to see if that does make any difference or no. Okay, so I've just got to refit that onto the car now. The wastegate's bolted back into position there. I just need to put the rest of the exhaust on. As much fun as it would be driving the car around like that, even I don't upset the neighbours that much. Anyway, I need to, so I'm going to get the exhaust back on. It's going to be a while till there's a next update on this boost videos, partly because it's December and I can't really, the roads are either freezing cold or wet. Also, I've actually got the car in the garage, which is a really unusual place for it to be. It hardly ever ends up in there. You might notice some fairly vital things missing, so I'm doing some other projects. I'll be tidying up that absolute rat's nest of a wiring loom. I often mention this ADHD thing, but I think it does come out with sometimes. I'll get things working and then tie it all up, and that would do. I'm not so great at the making things look neat and tidy, so I'm going to take the opportunity when once I've sorted these switches out, it's all just lying here at the moment, so all that lot's going to be going. Take the opportunity to tidy everything up. Anyway, that's the excuses why it's going to be probably not till Feb, I guess, until I'll be able to test what's going on with this wastegate and turbo control. But I will do one as soon as I can. Hi, thanks for getting to the end of the video. If you're not already subscribed, please do so now. Just hit the subscribe button and then hit the bell button, and that way YouTube will tell you when there's any new videos. We've got some big plans ahead for the channel, including possibly a car build from scratch. So if you want to get involved with that, now's the time to subscribe. Cheers then, bye.